There is a secret that lives in the space between your breaths, a truth so profound that most will spend entire lifetimes running from it while simultaneously searching for it in all the wrong places. The medieval Sufi master Ibn Arabi, known as the greatest sheikh, whispered this secret across centuries, that an awakened soul cannot be wounded by this world, not because it has built walls around itself, not because it has become numb or indifferent, but because it has understood something so fundamental about the nature of reality that pain itself transforms into something else entirely. This is not about becoming invulnerable through hardness. This is about becoming invulnerable through surrender. Consider for a moment the architecture of human suffering. A single word from a stranger can ruin your day. A glance can make you question your worth. A memory can haunt you for decades. We walk through life as if we are made of glass, shattering at the slightest touch, collecting our fragments only to be broken again. But what if this fragility is not our natural state? What if we have been living in a dream, mistaking shadows for substance, reflections for reality? Ibn Arabi taught that the world we perceive with our ordinary consciousness is not the ultimate reality. It is merely a veil, a passing shadow cast by the eternal light of the divine. In the depths of his mystical experiences, Ibn Arabi discovered that everything we see, touch, and experience is nothing but God manifesting in infinite forms. The one becomes the many, yet never ceases to be one. This is not mere philosophy or abstract theology. This is a direct perception that fundamentally alters how one moves through existence. When you truly understand that there is no separation between the divine and creation, that every atom is a precise enunciation of the real being, then the question becomes, who is there to hurt and what is there to be hurt? The sleeping soul identifies with the temporary, with the body that ages, with the emotions that fluctuate, with the thoughts that race through the mind like wild horses. It builds its entire identity on shifting sand, wealth that comes and goes, health that rises and falls, relationships that bloom and wither, praise that turns to criticism. When your sense of self is anchored in these transient phenomena, you become their prisoner. One loss destroys your peace, one betrayal makes you bitter for life, one failure crushes your confidence. You are not living, you are merely reacting, a leaf blown by every wind. But the awakened soul has discovered an anchor that cannot be moved. Ibn Arabi calls this divine reality, the eternal, unchanging truth that underlies all temporary manifestations. When your consciousness shifts from identification with the changing to identification with the unchanging, something miraculous occurs. The events of life continue to unfold. Circumstances still arise and dissolve, but they no longer have the power to define you. You move through the world like a reflection moving across water, present, engaged, responsive, yet never truly disturbed. This is not dissociation or spiritual bypassing. This is the highest form of presence. The awakened soul feels more deeply than the sleeping one, not less. But there is a fundamental difference in the quality of that feeling. When Ibn Arabi writes about the realized human being who has attained direct eye-witnessing, he describes someone who has reached spiritual perfection not by escaping from life, but by penetrating to its essential core. Such a person has discovered the prostration of the heart, that sacred center point where the individual will surrender completely to the divine will. Think about what happens in this surrender. The ordinary person encounters difficulty and immediately begins a war with reality. This shouldn't be happening. Why me? How can I make this stop? The entire nervous system goes into fight or flight. The mind races with catastrophic scenarios. The heart contracts in fear or anger. But the awakened soul, having prostrated the heart to the divine, sees difficulty through a completely different lens. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? They ask, what is Allah teaching me through this? This single shift in perspective is revolutionary. When you lose wealth, perhaps the divine is teaching you detachment. When you face betrayal, perhaps you are being shown to place your trust in God alone. When you suffer illness, perhaps you are being reminded of your fragility so that you return to the source with humility. Every pain hides a meaning, and once you uncover it, the pain transforms into wisdom. This is the alchemical process that Ibn Arabi understood so deeply. How pain becomes light, how suffering becomes awareness, how crisis becomes opportunity for awakening. The suffering that would harden an ordinary heart softens the heart of one who is awakened. The loss that would fill most people with despair fills the realized soul with deeper trust. The betrayal that would make others bitter makes them more compassionate. Why? Because they have discovered that nothing in this world happens outside the divine orchestration. If everything is an expression of God, then everything, even what appears as harm, is ultimately an expression of divine mercy. Ibn Arabi taught that God's mercy encompasses all things, and that even divine wrath operates through mercy. This is one of the most challenging concepts to grasp from the perspective of ordinary consciousness. When the physician cuts the patient, is this cruelty or compassion? When the surgeon breaks the bone to set it properly, is this harm or healing? From the limited perspective of the moment, it appears as violence. From the wider perspective of ultimate well-being, it is love in action. The awakened soul has access to this wider perspective, not through philosophical speculation, but through direct spiritual vision. Ibn Arabi speaks of unveiling, the lifting of the veils that obscure our perception of reality. When these veils dissolve through spiritual practice and divine grace, you begin to see what was always there but hidden from ordinary awareness. You see that every apparent harm was actually a redirection toward greater good. Every loss was a liberation from false attachment. Every ending was a necessary prelude to a truer beginning. This seeing is not intellectual understanding. It is direct experiential knowledge. The Arabic word Ibn Arabi uses is ma'rifa, spiritual understanding or gnosis. When you have ma'rifa, you are protected from spiritual harm. The devil no longer has any way to influence you, not because temptations disappear, but because you perceive them clearly for what they are and turn away from them effortlessly. The realized saint still feels the promptings of the lower self, but these promptings no longer have power. Each temptation becomes an opportunity to choose the divine, and through this repeated choosing, the soul ascends to ever higher stations of proximity to God. There is a beautiful paradox in Ibn Arabi's teaching that reveals the true nature of invulnerability. He explains that the human spirit, when embodied, is conjoined with natural weakness and needfulness. This conjunction is not a punishment, but a divine design. If the spirit was separated completely from matter, its original power from the divine inbreathing would appear fully, and there is nothing more arrogant than an unconstrained spirit. So God keeps the spirit connected to the natural form both in this world and in the next, so that human beings remain continually aware of their needfulness and dependency on the divine. This is the secret within the secret. True invulnerability comes not from power, but from recognizing your essential poverty before God. You cannot be wounded by loss when you know you never possessed anything in the first place. You cannot be devastated by rejection when you understand that only divine acceptance matters. You cannot be crushed by failure when you realize that every outcome is in God's hands, not yours. The awakened soul lives in a state of continuous faqr, spiritual poverty and needfulness before the divine, and paradoxically, this absolute needfulness becomes absolute sufficiency. When Ibn Arabi speaks of the awakened soul being unhurt by the world, he is pointing to a state where external circumstances have lost their power to define your internal state. Students of his protection methods reported remarkable experiences, working in toxic environments without absorbing the negativity, interacting with hostile people without taking on their emotional states, walking through danger with a sense of safety that comes from knowing they are invisible to harmful intentions. Some found that negative people would literally not notice them, as if they had become transparent to malicious awareness. Others discovered that aggressive individuals became inexplicably calm in their presence. But Ibn Arabi always emphasized that these phenomena are side effects, not goals. The real purpose of spiritual protection is to maintain your connection to divine guidance and your capacity to serve the highest good, regardless of external circumstances. Every soul has a specific spiritual mission in this world, and negative forces constantly try to distract you from fulfilling that mission. When you become invisible to evil influences through spiritual awakening, you become more capable of focusing on your true purpose. This invisibility to harm is not physical, but spiritual. The Taoist tradition speaks of a similar principle, that when one possesses a harmonious flow of vital energy, they elicit kindness from others, whereas negative flow may lead to hostility. An enlightened master's positive energy is so powerful that it disarms even those with malicious intent. The awakened person navigates through life, creating a field of consciousness around them that naturally deflects harmful energies. Yet we must be honest about what awakening does and does not provide. An enlightened person still inhabits a physical body that can experience pain. If someone strikes them, they feel the impact. If they fall ill, they experience the symptoms. What changes is not the sensation itself, but the relationship to that sensation. The body experiences what bodies experience, but the awakened consciousness is not overwhelmed or defined by these experiences. The Bhagavata Purana, echoing similar wisdom to Ibn Arabi, states that the influence of material nature cannot harm an enlightened soul even though they engage in material activities, because they know the truth of the Absolute and their mind is fixed on the Supreme. This is the key, fixity of consciousness on the divine. When your awareness is anchored in the eternal, the waves of temporary experience wash over you but do not sink you. You feel the pain, but you are not the pain. You encounter the difficulty, but you are not reduced to the difficulty. Ibn Arabi teaches that this fixity comes through remembrance, dhikr in Arabic. Continuous remembrance of God is not just repeating sacred words, it is maintaining an ongoing awareness of the divine presence in every moment. When you live in remembrance, you are perpetually conscious that you are moving within the breath of the All-Merciful. Each thing in the universe, including yourself, is a word uttered by God. When you know yourself as divine utterance rather than separate entity, how can anything truly harm you? The cosmology that Ibn Arabi presents is one of descent and return. All things devolve from the One, sustained at every stage of their unfolding, reaching a furthest limit, and then reversing direction to be reintegrated into their origin. The entire cosmos moves in this great circle of being. The awakened soul consciously participates in the return journey. While others are caught in the downward movement of increasing separation and forgetfulness, the realized being has turned around and begun the ascent back to the source. This ascent is not a physical journey, but a transformation of consciousness. Sufism describes it as passing through 7 valleys or stages of spiritual awakening. In the famous allegory by Farid al-Din Attar, thousands of birds set out seeking a king for their kingdom. They must cross 7 valleys, each demanding something different from them. Many birds die, give up, turn back, or make excuses. Only 30 complete the journey. When they arrive at the end, they discover that the king they sought is a reflection of themselves. They are part of the whole they were searching for. This is the ultimate realization that makes the soul invulnerable. The recognition that there is no separation between seeker and sought, between individual and divine, between self and God. In mystical terminology, this is called fana, the annihilation of the separate self in the realization of unity. When you experience fana, the distinctions between lover and beloved, between seeker and sought, vanish into the unity of witness consciousness. In this state of holy silence, you are no longer a separate entity that can be targeted or harmed. You have dissolved into the infinite ocean of being. Rumi, Ibn Arabi's contemporary in the Sufi tradition, described silence as the gateway to this divine consciousness. Not the mere absence of noise, but a dynamic, alive silence, the very breath that purifies the soul, freeing it from worldly passions and mental distractions. The soul must dive beneath the still surface of this silence to uncover the secrets of spiritual salvation. In the depths of that silence, in the space where words end and direct knowing begins, the awakened soul discovers its true nature. But let us be clear about what this awakening demands. It is not a comfortable process. It does not happen through reading books or entertaining spiritual concepts. True awakening requires the death of everything you thought you were. It requires walking through valleys of fear, doubt, loss, and complete dissolution. Many begin the journey, few complete it. Why? Because the price of invulnerability is the surrender of the separate self. The price of freedom from pain is the death of the one who could be pained. This is why Ibn Arabi speaks of the prostration of the heart. Prostration is the physical posture of complete surrender, face to the ground, ego dissolved, will given over entirely to the divine. When the heart assumes this posture internally, when it stops resisting what is and instead bows before the divine will in all circumstances, liberation occurs. Not liberation from circumstance, but liberation within circumstance. The events continue, but they no longer have the power to disturb the essential peace of the awakened soul. Consider what this means practically. An insult comes your way. Instead of your peace being ruined, you see it as the other person's suffering expressing itself, and you respond with compassion. A failure occurs. Instead of your confidence being crushed, you see it as redirection from the divine, and you remain open to new possibilities. Betrayal happens. Instead of becoming bitter for life, you recognize that everyone is acting from their level of consciousness, and you maintain your connection to trust in God. This is not suppression of feeling. This is transformation of perspective. Ibn Arabi teaches that pain is a mirror. When you are hurt, it reflects what is truly inside you. Do you respond with bitterness or patience? Do you let it make you cruel or compassionate? If you choose the higher path, pain no longer controls you, it elevates you. With each hardship you endure with awareness and surrender, your soul becomes more luminous. This is why many of the most spiritually realized beings became who they were not in times of ease, but in times of struggle. Their pain carved out space in their hearts, and the divine filled that space with light. The awakened soul understands something that the sleeping world cannot fathom, that so-called negative experiences are often the divine's most direct teaching methods. When life is comfortable, it is easy to remain spiritually complacent, to mistake the gift for the giver, to forget your essential needfulness before God. But when everything is stripped away, when you are brought to your knees by circumstance, when there is nothing left to hold on to, that is when real awakening becomes possible. That is when you discover whether your faith is genuine or merely a fair-weather convenience. Ibn Arabi describes how even what appears as divine chastisement is actually therapeutic, intended to rectify and heal. Like a physician causing temporary harm for greater healing, God's apparent harshness serves mercy's ultimate purpose. Those who suffer in this life and even in the afterlife will eventually reform themselves, consciously submit to God, and surrender all hope of controlling their destiny. At that point of complete surrender, sweetness manifests. The fire that seemed to burn becomes cool, like Abraham's fire. What appeared as punishment transforms into pleasure. This is the great reversal that awaits those who awaken. Suffering becomes joy, loss becomes gain, death becomes life. Not because the external circumstances change, but because the internal relationship to those circumstances has been completely transformed. The awakened soul has discovered the secret that Ibn Arabi encoded in all his teachings, that reality is not what it appears to be from the perspective of ordinary consciousness. What seems solid is actually fluid. What seems separate is actually unified. What seems harmful is actually merciful when seen from the perspective of ultimate truth. This brings us to perhaps the most profound aspect of Ibn Arabi's teaching on the invulnerability of awakened consciousness. It is not that nothing bad happens to the awakened soul. It is that bad and good are revealed as limited human categories that do not apply to divine action. From God's perspective, everything is exactly as it should be, unfolding according to perfect wisdom. The awakened soul participates in this divine perspective. They see with the eye of the heart, which perceives the hidden beneficence behind apparent difficulty. The Bhagavata Purana instructs the enlightened person to endeavor only for minimum necessities, while in the world of names, to be intelligently fixed and never strive for unwanted things, having perceived practically that such endeavors are merely hard labor for nothing. This is not ascetic renunciation for its own sake, but the natural result of awakening to what truly matters. When you taste the infinite, the finite loses its addictive grip. When you drink from the source, the derivative streams no longer intoxicate you. The awakened soul moves through the world engaged but not entangled, present but not possessed, responsive but not reactive. They offer obeisances before all beings, seeing the divine in everything, even in the difficult people, the challenging circumstances, the painful experiences. Until one has fully developed the ability to see the divine within all living beings, this practice continues. And when that ability is perfected, when transcendental knowledge of the all-pervading personality of Godhead becomes one's constant vision, then one truly sees the absolute truth everywhere. Freed from all doubts, liberated from the tyranny of temporary circumstance, the awakened soul rests in unshakable peace, But we must address a question that arises naturally from this teaching. If nothing can hurt an awakened soul, does this mean they become cold, detached, inhuman? Quite the opposite. The awakened soul feels more, not less. They experience deeper compassion, more profound love, greater empathy, but their feeling is not contaminated by identification or attachment. They can witness suffering without being destroyed by it. They can offer help without needing to rescue. They can love deeply without grasping or possessing. This is the difference between emotional reactivity and emotional maturity. The ordinary person is tossed about by feelings, a victim of their emotional weather. The awakened soul experiences emotions fully but is not controlled by them. Joy arises and they experience it completely. Then it passes and they remain steady. Sorrow comes and they allow it to move through them. Then it dissolves and they remain unchanged in their essential nature. They have discovered the unchanging awareness that witnesses all states without being any particular state. Ibn Arabi points to the prophets as the ultimate exemplars of this awakened consciousness. In their lives, we see human beings who faced incredible hardship yet remained unshaken in their connection to the divine. They were rejected, persecuted, exiled, threatened with death, and through it all they maintained perfect trust in God. How? Because they had direct experiential knowledge that there is no power except God's power, no will except as it participates in divine will, no harm except what serves divine purpose. The prophets represent the return journey made complete. They descended from the divine to walk among humanity, yet they never forgot their origin. They lived the highest spiritual realization while simultaneously fulfilling human responsibilities. This is the model Ibn Arabi presents, not escape from the world, but enlightened engagement with it. The awakened soul does not run from difficulty. They meet it with spiritual awareness. They do not avoid pain. They transform it through understanding. The protection methods that Ibn Arabi taught were not magical formulas or supernatural shields. They were practices that align consciousness with divine reality. When your awareness is properly aligned, when you are genuinely connected to your spiritual source, you naturally become invisible to certain harmful influences. Not because you are hidden, but because you are operating at a different frequency. Negative people and energies target the vulnerable, the reactive, the fearful. When you are established in fearless presence, grounded in divine remembrance, there is nothing for negativity to grip onto. This is not metaphor. This is practical mystical technology. Consciousness is causal. The state of your awareness literally affects what you encounter and how you encounter it. When you maintain spiritual vigilance, continuous awareness of the divine presence, you create a field of consciousness that naturally repels harm, not through force or resistance, but through vibrational incompatibility. Light does not fight darkness. It simply shines, and darkness cannot remain in its presence. But again, Ibn Arabi reminds us that this protection is not the goal. It is a byproduct. The goal is gnosis, direct knowing of God, realization of unity. The goal is to fulfill your specific spiritual mission in this world without distraction. The goal is to serve the highest good with undivided consciousness. When these become your genuine priorities, protection arises naturally as a side effect of your alignment with divine will. There is a teaching in Ibn Arabi's work that addresses the seeming contradiction between spiritual invulnerability and the reality of prophets and saints who suffered greatly. Did they not experience harm? Were they not persecuted, tortured, killed? Yes, their bodies experienced what bodies experience, but their consciousness, their essential being, remained untouched. They did not suffer in the way an ordinary person suffers because they did not identify with the body or the temporary self. They knew themselves as eternal spirit, temporarily clothed in flesh. When someone strikes your body and you believe, I am this body, you suffer. When someone strikes your body and you know, I am not ultimately this body, you experience pain, but not suffering. This distinction is crucial. Pain is a physical sensation. Suffering is a mental interpretation. The awakened soul may feel pain, but they do not add layers of mental anguish, resentment, victimhood, or despair on top of that pain. They meet the experience with acceptance and trust in divine wisdom. This is where Ibn Arabi's teaching becomes intensely practical. You do not need to be a perfect mystic to begin applying these principles. You can start exactly where you are. The next time someone says something hurtful to you, pause before reacting. Ask yourself, who is the me that feels hurt? Is this pain arising from wounded ego or from genuine harm? What might the divine be showing me through this interaction? These simple questions begin to create space between stimulus and response, between event and interpretation. In that space, awakening becomes possible. In that gap between what happens and how you respond to what happens, you can choose differently. You can choose the response of the awakened soul rather than the reaction of the sleeping self. With each conscious choice, the awakened state becomes more accessible, more natural, more stable. You are literally rewiring your consciousness, training yourself to perceive from the perspective of unity rather than separation. Ibn Arabi teaches that this training happens through the trials of life. Each difficulty is an opportunity to practice surrender. Each pain is an invitation to seek the divine meaning hidden within it. Each loss is a chance to discover what cannot be lost. The soul is forged in the fire of experience. Those who flee from difficulty remain spiritually immature. Those who face challenges with awareness and trust grow in spiritual stature. This is why the most realized beings often have the most difficult lives, not because God is punishing them, but because they are being refined, purified, perfected. Gold must pass through fire to be separated from dross. The soul must pass through trials to be freed from false identifications. What seems cruel from one angle is revealed as compassion from another. The physician's knife that cuts is also the instrument of healing. The awakened soul has learned to trust the physician. Even when the treatment is painful, even when the cure seems worse than the disease, they maintain faith in divine wisdom. They know that their limited perspective cannot see the whole picture. They understand that what their ego wants and what their soul needs are often quite different. So they practice what Ibn Arabi calls surrender. Not passive resignation, but active alignment with divine will. This surrender is the key to invulnerability. When you stop resisting what is, when you cease fighting with reality, when you align your will with the greater will that orchestrates all things, then nothing can truly harm you. Harm requires opposition, something pushing against something else. But when you have surrendered into unity, when you have recognized that there is only one actor appearing in countless forms, then where is the opposition? Who is harming whom? This is the deepest truth that Ibn Arabi reveals. In the state of realized unity, harm becomes impossible because there is no separate self to be harmed. There is only the one being experiencing itself through infinite perspectives. What appears as your suffering is God experiencing the human condition through this particular focal point of consciousness. What seems like harm being done to you is the cosmic drama unfolding exactly as it must. From this perspective, forgiveness becomes effortless. How can you hold a grudge when you recognize that the person who hurt you was simply playing their role in the divine theater? How can you remain bitter when you understand that what seemed like betrayal was actually a necessary step in your spiritual evolution? The awakened soul forgives not through great effort, but through clear seeing. They perceive the perfection underlying the apparent imperfection, the love hiding behind apparent harm, the unity that contains all apparent duality. This does not mean becoming a doormat or allowing abuse to continue. The awakened soul maintains appropriate boundaries and takes wise action, but they do so without inner turmoil, without emotional contamination, without losing their center. They can say no firmly while remaining internally at peace. They can protect themselves physically while maintaining spiritual equanimity. External action and internal state are not the same thing. Ibn Arabi's teaching points to a kind of spiritual judo, using the energy of difficulty to fuel awakening rather than being destroyed by it. Every challenge becomes training, every pain becomes teacher, every loss becomes liberation. The awakened soul has learned to extract wisdom from every experience, to find the gift in every package, to receive the teaching hidden in every difficulty. This is not positive thinking or self-deception. This is the fruit of genuine spiritual vision that perceives the beneficent pattern underlying all manifestation. As consciousness stabilizes in this awakened perception, something remarkable happens. Life begins to flow differently. Synchronicities multiply. Obstacles dissolve. People who would normally create problems become inexplicably cooperative. It is as if the universe itself begins to support your journey once you align with its deepest truth. This is not magic. This is the natural result of living in harmony with the fundamental nature of reality. Ibn Arabi calls this being in tune with the breath of the All-Merciful. When your individual breath synchronizes with the cosmic breath, when your small will aligns with the infinite will, grace flows naturally. Doors open, resources appear, guidance comes. Not because you are manipulating reality, but because you are finally cooperating with it. You have stopped swimming against the current and allowed yourself to be carried by the river that was always flowing toward the ocean of unity. This is the promise that Ibn Arabi offers to those brave enough to undertake the journey of awakening, that nothing and no one can ultimately hurt you, because there is no separate you to be hurt. There is only the one experiencing itself through temporary forms. When you know this not intellectually but experientially, when this truth becomes your living reality rather than a concept you entertain, then you have discovered the greatest secret. You have found the treasure that was always within you, the invulnerability that comes not from hardness but from recognizing your essential nature as that which cannot be created or destroyed. The journey to this realization is not easy. It demands everything. It requires the death of who you think you are, so that who you truly are can be revealed. Most will turn back when they glimpse what the journey demands. But for those who persist, for those who are willing to walk through the valley of annihilation to reach the peaks of realization, the reward is infinite. They discover a peace that cannot be disturbed, a joy that is not dependent on circumstances, a love that has no opposite. They become what Ibn Arabi describes as the realized human being, someone who has reached spiritual perfection through direct eye-witnessing of truth. Such a person walks through life untouchable by the chaos that destroys ordinary consciousness, not because they are special or superior, but because they have remembered what everyone has forgotten, that we are not separate waves, but the ocean itself temporarily taking wave form. A wave can be crashed upon, but can the ocean be harmed? This is the question Ibn Arabi leaves echoing in the chambers of the heart. What are you, really? Are you the temporary form that will inevitably dissolve, the personality that shifts and changes, the body that ages and dies? Or are you the eternal awareness in which all these temporary phenomena arise and subside? When you discover your true nature as the unchanging that witnesses all change, as the eternal that contains all temporal, manifestation as the one that appears as many, in that discovery you become invulnerable. Not invulnerable in the sense that nothing ever happens to you, but invulnerable in the sense that nothing can fundamentally disturb what you are. The body may be struck, but you are not the body. The ego may be insulted, but you are not the ego. The personality may face difficulty, but you are not the personality. You are the vast, spacious awareness in which body, ego, and personality appear. And that awareness itself cannot be wounded, cannot be diminished, cannot be destroyed. This is what Ibn Arabi means when he speaks of the awakened soul's invulnerability. This is the secret that has been whispered by mystics across all traditions, expressed in different languages, but pointing to the same truth. You are not who you think you are. You are not the limited, vulnerable, separate self that fears harm and seeks protection. You are the infinite itself, temporarily focused through a particular point of view, and the infinite cannot be harmed by anything within itself. When this recognition becomes your lived reality, you move through the world in a completely different way. Challenges still arise, but they no longer have the power to destabilize you. People still behave badly, but their actions no longer have the capacity to wound you deeply. Loss still occurs, but it no longer devastates you. Why? Because you have found something that cannot be challenged, disturbed, or lost: your essential nature as eternal awareness. This is not a teaching to merely contemplate. This is a truth to embody, a reality to live, a consciousness to awaken to through dedicated spiritual practice. Ibn Arabi's writings are not philosophical treatises meant for intellectual entertainment. They are maps for the journey of transformation. They point the way, but you must walk the path. You must be willing to pass through your own 7 valleys, to face your own fears and doubts, to surrender your own ego. And in that surrender, in that passage through the fire of purification, you will discover what the greatest mystics have always known: that nothing external can ultimately harm you, because your true self exists beyond the reach of external circumstances. The world can take your possessions, your relationships, your health, even your life, but it cannot touch what you essentially are. That remains forever untouched, forever pure, forever invulnerable. This is the gift that Ibn Arabi offers across the centuries to those who have ears to hear and hearts ready to awaken. The recognition that you are already free, already whole, already invulnerable. Not in some distant future after years of spiritual practice, but right now in this very moment. The only thing standing between you and this recognition is the belief that you are something other than what you truly are. Release that belief, and the awakened state reveals itself as your natural condition. Nothing and no one can hurt an awakened soul, not because the awakened soul has built impenetrable defenses, but because the awakened soul has realized there is no separate entity to defend. In the recognition of unity, vulnerability dissolves. In the experience of the divine presence in all things, harm becomes impossible. In the surrender to what is, peace floods in. This is the path Ibn Arabi illuminated with his life and teachings. This is the invitation he extends to every human heart to wake up from the dream of separation, to remember your true nature, to discover the invulnerability that comes from union with the divine. The journey is not easy, but the destination makes every step worthwhile. And perhaps the greatest secret of all is that the destination is not somewhere else. It is here now, waiting to be recognized by consciousness, willing to stop, look, and see what has always been true.